Derbycon! Feels good to be here. Thank you all for coming to my TED Talk. How to tell the sea level their baby is ugly. Because it probably is. So I don't know if any of you read the pamphlet or you came here blind or what you're expecting to see, but hopefully you get some of it. If not, I hope you brought something to drink. So I'll go ahead and get into this. Who am I? Oh, there's supposed to be a picture there. Is there a picture there? Oh. This might go poorly. Let me try something real quick. Come on. No? Aha. Hey! That's me. So who am I? I doxed myself in the program. My name is Heather Smith. I go by Lit Moose, most of the time just Moose. If I introduce you and I don't introduce myself as Heather, it's not because I'm weird about my name. It's just because I've gone by Moose for years. I'm a DFIR dumpster diver. I see all the things. I was formerly a project manager and a data analyst. So I've had a lot of experience trying to convince management to do things that they didn't want to do. Look at logs all day. Most of my time is report writing. That's a lot of fun. Not going to be talking too much about that. I scream into the void. I'm a pretty benevolent contractor. I'm white hat, and I've seen some shit. Because I'm a contractor, I might have seen your shit. All right. So, fact: most babies are ugly. I like this one. All right. So your baby might be ugly if MFA isn't enabled and you YOLO your password management. So many times I've seen this. In fact, a buddy in the Dallas group said the other day that he saw Trello as a password manager the other day. So that's fun. Your baby might be ugly if your Mac environment is doubling as your user's iTunes library. Guys, if we're not monitoring this, insider threat is just oh yeah, we're going to have all the sensitive documents created on this user's Mac, and they're just going to sync it to home. And if they go away, so does all of those, files with them. Your baby might be ugly if personal email is accessible and not monitored. I say two things as a caveat, because I know this is a pain point for a lot of us. We get phished all the time. Personal email is enabled in the environment. They have to use it because some executive needs it. That's all well and fine. If you're not monitoring it, though, shame on you. So your baby might be ugly if you only are monitoring events on the endpoints. This is the hill that I die on. I am super big into defense in depth. I hear every company say, we have the silver bullet. No, you don't. No. Yeah, don't do that. Your baby might be ugly if you roll your own cryptography. There it is. I have only met one person in my life who I think could probably roll his own cryptography and be okay, and he is sitting in the front row, and he goes by Ridgeback, and he's right there, and when I told him this, he laughed at me and said, fuck no. So don't do it. Your baby might be ugly if you find 5 Ennies on a firewall. Let me tell you a story. This one hurts. So I found 5 Ennies on a firewall. I found 5 Ennies on a firewall to mission-critical systems. And when I asked why, that any source and any destination was not enough to make it work, they were like, well, we thought that it might exclude some users, and we didn't want any downtime. So we did any user. And I said, yeah, there's 2 more Ennies there. And it's like, well, yeah, we have a lot of services, so, any of them will do. Okay, so you put an Ennie there. And then I was like, okay, so any service, and I was like, and then that leaves one more, and they were like, yeah, any application, so we didn't know the difference between service and application. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 Ennies on a firewall. This is just a bad day. Alright, so, how do we communicate these things to a C-level to make sure that it gets changed effectively? Guys, if this was my boss, I would never quit. So, sea level is typically human. They're just like we are, except they go to many, many more meetings, hopefully. I hope you don't go to that many meetings. They're constrained by time, so a lot of what I found in working with them is if you're not able to start out with the meat and potatoes of something, and sorry vegetarians, I'm still living in Dallas, so I use their analogies. If you're not able to get to that chunk of exactly what you want in a very succinct way, they're going to be frustrated. They just don't have time for you or for me or anybody else. They don't even have time for themselves. They're very sick of meetings. So bullet points over paragraphs. They're very focused on the CIA triad because they've had to drink that Kool-Aid of how do I effectively tell the people that work laterally to me, because you're not just working with a CISO, you're also having to work with a CISO who then has to work with his whole suite or her whole suite, or anybody above them, to where if it's publicly traded, what are you communicating? There are non-technical people everywhere that have to be communicated to. So how do they communicate that? And it's in dollar amounts, and it's in what's happening to our environment. So keeping in mind where they stand and what they care about, that's kind of where I found the sweet spot. Is if you can tie it back into that confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You can probably get stuff done and just make it a horror story. And then because they work with so many non-technical people on the other side of the fence, maybe not you, if you are able to translate whatever you found 2 ways, succinctly, both technical and non-technical, they'll probably take it and use it because now they only have to copy and paste. So where are my red teamers at? Oh my god, really? That's it? Or are you shy? So I've got the front row. So red team, I'll just talk to you. And a few scattered, sorry. So I've seen red teamers have the most difficult time with this, communicating to the C-level why they should be breaking their shit. It's a very difficult, kind of line to toe. And so having a top 10 list and coming in with questions in mind of what they care about most, and scoping around that, even if you know and you find something that is completely left field because it's an unknown, they don't know about it, you didn't know it existed. If you have 10 things, generally speaking, use your social engineering skills, tie it back into that top 10, and have them affirm in writing that those are the things that are most important to them. And so have that communication off the bat. Always have a scope going in. Make sure that they've agreed to it. If you don't, they'll come back and say, I didn't say that. Even if they did say it, they'll say, I didn't say that. It happens. They forget. Writing is best. Including screenshots, even if they're overtly technical. This is something that I learned the hard way in working with some C-levels, because it was frowned upon to be too technical, too fast. And really what that meant was language, and they seemed to love the code. So if you have a picture, even if they'll never understand it, and I'm not saying that C-levels come from, areas that are non-technical, it's not that, but nobody can be an expert in all the things. So just assume that maybe they don't know exactly what you've done in your screenshot, but include it anyways, because it shows your value. You're doing something that they couldn't do, or that nobody else on the team is doing. And it's kind of the proof in the pudding of, here is a picture that you don't have to analyze, and here is the non-technical language under it. And so those captions and that non-technical language should answer who, what, how, and why, and it's in business speak. So as basic as you can make it, of, somebody came over and they popped our domain controller, and now all of the users are basically not necessarily our users. As simple as possible to get your point across. Teamwork makes the dream work. Where are my blue teamers? Okay. This makes sense. Yeah, I do DFIR. I probably should have said this talk was for everybody, but love you guys. So red team should love blue team. Blue team, I definitely love my red team. Working together to derive holistic solutions is where I've seen most C-levels sign off quicker, because you're mitigating any gap in a whole solution of, we've proven that the attack was either successful or unsuccessful, and we've proven where the blue team can or can't see something. And so doing those peer attack and defense workshops and going through your own environment and trying to see end to end, and even pulling in your networking team, they don't even have to be security, and getting people involved. The more people you have involved and the more resources you have involved, probably the stronger your argument's going to be. When you do this, learn from my fail, have everybody, and I mean everybody, timestamp in UTC. Everything that they do. And don't leave it up to assumption that, that's just what everybody does. Don't do that. Timestamp everything in UTC, and make sure that they match up at the end, because then you can do an easy timeline and you're not doing more work. And that's really that teamwork is how you're finding the unknown unknowns. So, how do you translate this to your C levels? This can be kind of difficult, because this is, again, much more technical workshop that you're doing with your experts in the field. So, literally, I boil it down to, if attack is successful, here's what you need to know. What is the average time to mitigate it? Why do we care about this? It goes back to that CIA triad of, is there downtime? Are things available? What's going on? Is it impacting anything? It's doing that kind of impact analysis. And then, where are my resources? If my resources are pulled in on this, how much money am I spending on each head? And are there enough of them to get it done? And giving them more of that of, listen, if this attack is actually successful, we're not prepared for it because X, Y, Z, or we are prepared for it, but you're about to spend a lot of money. And so if attack isn't successful, what is in place stopping it? What have you already spent money on? What does our stock look like? What are we doing right? And making sure that you're also reporting those in a good way, because generally speaking, you can probably say, if attack was successful, this is your cost. If we stop it, here's this little number that is basically negligible in comparison. And I know you all have heard the average cost of a breach is something in the 7.4 million now. I don't know. I didn't see the latest statistic. I didn't look it up. I'm a bad presenter. Teamwork makes the dream work part 2. You can do all of this and you can say all of this until the cows come home. I can't tell you how many emails I've written where I have it bold at the very top. I might highlight it in yellow, exactly what I want done. If it doesn't have a picture, it doesn't fly with some people. I'm not saying all of them, but pictures really make things stick out. And so I do this with memes. I am not recommending doing this at home. Know your C level. If they have a sense of humor, this might work. If they don't, what I do recommend is doing graphs and screenshots and tables, and taking anything you're saying that's a little bit lengthier in an executive summary. And when I say lengthier, it could even be as short as 2 sentences. Still having a graph or a chart to visualize that will drive the point home. So it's like when you're in grade school and you're writing an essay and they say, start out with 3 things that you're going to talk about in the body. Conclude with 3 things that you talked about in the body. You're kind of doing that and supplementing with pictures and tables. And I've seen a lot less pushback when you do that work up front. And it takes less time than the back and forth of arguing, usually to say, well, why do I care about this? Which is what a former C-level used to say all the time is, tell me why I care. Executive summaries. You really want to boil it down to if you're doing something that's proactive, have your hypothesis in there. Even if you're doing an IR, having hypotheses early on and having those kind of documented, even for yourself, and having that in business speak will help with the communication chain and sometimes help drive change as you're going. So if you're an incident responder, you don't really want to wait until the report to say, hey, we saw that you had RDP exposed to the internet, 4 weeks ago. Here's the report. As soon as you notice, say, hey, maybe we should shut this down. And here's why. And so making sure that you have your hypothesis, even if it's not you haven't proven that's how somebody got in. If you notice it, see something, say something. Your findings should have executive summaries. And then cost analysis or impact analysis, risk analysis, all of these things to make better or change. And I don't ever say fix. I really don't think that security is ever fixed, but we do make it better. So, blue team. So, many of you should recognize the chain at the top. It might have triggered many of you on a ticket, and the trigger words come in at the very end there. If false positive, we should tune it. If true positive, we should prevent it, right? You would think that that's just, what we do. No. So review and closed ends up happening a lot when those two steps aren't taken. Either something is not tuned, so your tools aren't tuned, or preventative measures haven't been taken. You have someone on the management team who doesn't want to block for some reason. Somebody on your management team is worried about blocking legitimate traffic, a legitimate client, a legitimate service, or some firewalls don't actually show you their rules. A couple do, some don't share, the behind the scenes, behind the green screen. And so tuning that can be a little bit of a pain. Driving change through doing packet capture, it takes time and analysis and further analysis to tune. So the beating my head against the wall that happened here was months and months where I was working IR and my SOC was seeing the same tickets. And I can't tell you how many times I heard, if I see one more of these insert funny malware here, I'm going to jump off the building. And I was fearful for my SOC because I really think that they were about to. They would see the same attack every day, spend a lot of time on it. They weren't spending time doing other analysis. They had no time to do threat hunting, and it was clogging up the whole chain of events. So, metrics for your C-level, how much average time is being taken to remediate these things where we're not tuning them and we're not preventing them? So if they don't want to block things, if they don't want to tune the firewall, if they don't want to look at the WAF and they don't want to bother other teams that aren't under them, what's the cost of it? And not just to your team, so the cost to the associates you're paying for, but what's the cost of missing everything else that they're not looking at that time? Okay, what's the cost of maintaining a solution that maybe it's got defaults on? What aren't we looking at? So it's like boiling hot. Did you sit on this? You would. When are you talking next? That's so terrible. Hold on. I'm Scottish, but nobody should be able to do that in one go. God. I hate you so much. I know. You know what? This is like a fine whiskey. We're gonna sip the rest of this. Oh. Do that to your C-level and tell them that if they don't change the thing, that there's more where that came from, because nobody will ever, say no to you again. The risk of impact and change is reiterated. Hold on. This is great. So if change did not change, you're still going to do over-unders, and making it something that they can understand, and really taking your SOC away from threat hunting for something that can be fixed is very, very costly. And that's how you get external consultants like me in your environment doing IRs, and you should never ever want to see me again. Alright, and then alternative solutions and costs. That's actually really important, and I put that there for a reason, and I got distracted. Okay, so who works in an environment where you have machines, say Windows XP, where you cannot patch them for whatever reason. Yay! I know you people. I've felt your pain. You can't patch them. You can't because of some proprietary software, and everybody screams about it all day long of just patch it. No, you can't do that. You can hit like a port on them and turn it off for 7 days, and nobody knows how because it's in a foreign language. Like, you don't know like how it works. You probably can't touch the machine. So getting a creative alternative solution, doing NetFlow, doing something to where you're putting out sync holes for something. Get some pies in your environment and do testing. Like, what's the cost of alternative solutions? And kind of present that as well. All right. So reporting. This is one of my favorite things to do. I'm a masochist. To gain C-level approval for solutions, I think it's really important to provide, even if you're just blue or if you're just red, to provide both considerations. We should be feeding each other. It shouldn't just be one side or the other. I think gone are the days where we're either red or blue. We really need a hybrid, otherwise we're missing stuff in between. So doing risk assessments, looking at the staffing and budget to implement solutions. What is the staffing and budget if a solution is not implemented? Okay, so what that means is kind of what I just said about, if the worst case scenario happens and you talk to your disaster recovery folks, do you have the staff to respond very quickly to a bad incident, and what is your downtime going to cost you? And then how much does the average external DFIR team or team member cost? So looking at that and using that to kind of like drive your solution and the reason behind it, and then taking that and putting it in a way that's kind of more businessy and boring for them. They love it. I also kind of love it. So I like flowcharts. I used to be a project manager. I'm very big in Agile Scrum. Not as big on Gantt charts because things can go wrong. This is something called Waterfall. I made fun of it. I stole this meme. This is the one that I didn't make. Very much stole it. Liked it a lot. Analyze, plan, execute, rebaseline, execute, rebaseline, execute. Cold slap of reality. Switch to Agile method. Finish project very, very late. Pretend you can avoid this next time you can. A lot of the visuals that come with this is providing them a workflow and a chart or a timeline, something that shows this is, I've already thought about this, we've done the assessment, this is where you can just present this, here, take this, this is exactly what your solution is, and you're basically handing it off in such a way that they now have leverage to argue for your time, and the thing that you want to do. And it's when you present something like this, it's not just arguing to them, because there's so many other considerations. It's not like C-levels want to say no to you. So giving them the ammunition to where it's easy for them to get agreement and buy-in from either laterally from the rest of the C-suite, from the board, from whoever else is above them, is super important. And the more ammunition you give them in different forms, the better off you are. And this is where actually red and blue has to unfortunately become specialists in project management as well, because that's really what we're suggesting whenever we find something is a new project to fix whatever we've found or to continue going forward in a better way. In closing, oh wow, I went quick. Hold on, let me drink the rest of this. Do you want some? Yes, you probably should. Here. You know what? You should just have the rest. There you go. Yes! It's disgusting. Thank you. This is a thing that happens. Okay. Sir, how did that taste? Thank you. Thanks for that. Did you know, fun fact, you can have 6 NEs on a firewall? Because a certain company, who I will not mention, decided that you have, so it's even, right? So 5 is an uneven number, right? So you have it configured on one side where you have address, and so here's your source and there's your destination. And then you have the other fields. So user, service, application. There are 6 of them, and I always forget the 6th one because it's over on the source side, and I was like, why would anybody ever do that? And it was just a slight comfort to me when I found the 5 that I didn't find 6. But it is possible, so if you ever see it, tweet me about it. I will send you stickers and probably, like, bake you cookies and a sympathy cake, like, because that's just atrocious, and you should never go through something like that. So, kind of to wrap up, and I'll actually say a little bit more here because I think it's important and there's strategy around this. So C-levels are people like us. Some of them have a very, very diverse technical background. Some of them don't. Some of them went to business school. There are all walks of it, and approaches to them should be as formulaic as you approach your work. And the reason I say that, God, I'm going to keep... Yep. No. No. It's terrible. And it tastes like warm, whatever the fuck that was. Like, smeared off ice. So the reason I say it's formulaic is because repeatable process is important, and you're almost like doing a Pavlovian experiment with your C-level. And this is not a social engineering talk, but it almost should be. Because if you find out what works for them, it's going to work again. So if you find out the graph or chart they like, if you find out the bullet points they like, the style that they like your email, like, do research on it. When do you get the yes? How much did you include? How much did you have to include? Don't overwork yourself. Work smarter, not harder. And so create a formula and a plan of attack. Make sure that you are feeding your other team members, because we're all important. Blue couldn't exist without red. Red couldn't exist without blue. And none of us we would all be screaming if we didn't have our engineers for our firewalls and what have you. And they also make friends with them. They also drive, equipment purchases and stuff like that. So, make sure that you're coming together, and you're kind of testing out this idea of how am I going to communicate to them and including everything in it. Do something in a business document. Make it a PDF. Make it pretty. People like pretty things. It's we all put stickers on our laptops, So kind of do it like that. Be tenacious about it. So metric your failures to create wins. And that's something with the how many tickets am I working on? This is the same stuff that we're not tuning. Where are we getting pushback on, like, hey, I have a firewall and it's collecting PCAPs on the same infrastructure that it's running on. I really want to have a NAS that I point this to, but I've been told no. Okay, so document what you're not seeing and then what you have to do to get around that. And do a research study on whatever that failure, whatever impact that failure has, and then present it later. A no is not necessarily a permanent no when it comes to making security better. So be tenacious about it. That said, you can't win them all. If you could, none of us would have ever switched jobs. We'd be so happy, and we'd still be in the same environments we started in. So know when to walk away. If you're in an environment that isn't listening to the solutions you're giving, and you're following all of this advice, and you're providing charts, and you're providing risk analysis and impact, and I really mean doing your best. This isn't just like, hey, I told them that maybe we shouldn't have 5 ENIs on our firewall, and they just didn't get it. And, so go above and beyond a little bit, but if you're still getting that pushback, and you know that your environment is a raging dumpster fire, don't put your name on that. Like, don't continue to torture yourself. Talk to the people around you in the industry and see if you can't make it better, where can you go to affect change and get the fulfillment you need out of your career, because we all do this because we love it. And then no matter what, make memes, share laughs, never stop loving what you do. It's so important. Like, don't get burnout. We're not good at what we do when we don't care. So if you find yourself that you've stopped caring and you're getting too many failures, definitely move on and reach out to this community, everybody in this room, reach out to them because they care just as much to buy a ticket, come out to Derbycon, and spend a weekend not talking about, like, no, we're not at Disneyland. We're talking about technical things. We're talking about work. So, never stop. And that's pretty much it. I included for everybody a how-to for Gantt charts. If you choose to torture yourself with this, it is very effective for road mapping, but it is a little bit of self-torture. My slides were designed by my best friend in Florida. I am Florida woman. Meme review and generation. Thank you to so many people in this room who I either stole from or who helped out in curating. And then I really, really wanted to dedicate this to my Dallas Hackers family, who's in this front row right here. If you don't have a hacker family, come see these folks in the front row and move to Dallas. They're great. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. It's a legitimate question. Yes. Okay, so Danny asked, can I dox? Sure. You use your name on Twitter. Danny asked, who's sitting right here in the front row, if you want to come talk to him afterwards, when is a time, he also fed me a blazing hot ice, so whatever, I'm going to do what I want. He asked if there was a time, if I had a story of when I absolutely met complete resistance from the sea level, just feet in the ground, and what I did to change their minds, and if anything actually worked. I'm trying to think of one that's really solid. It's probably that endpoint one that I said was the hill I was going to die on. So had an organization that was very much tied to the product they were using and in love with it and had drunk all the Kool-Aid. And they were so afraid of network downtime that they wouldn't monitor or tune their network. They were letting everything get detected on endpoint. And so I tried to point out, listen, no product is a silver bullet. Stuff can get around it. And once you're through the network, that's already a breach. Like, they're in. Like, something has come in. Even if it's a script, even if it's a fish, something's dropped down. That's something entering your environment that shouldn't be there. So consider it that way. Bad shit's already happening. I kept getting pushed back, like, what's going to happen to the business? So the way I affected change is I went, okay, stuff's not going to happen at the macro level. So let's affect the micro level. So I found that the firewalls were configured to default on a specific kind of firewall that I shall not mention to send a reset flag instead of drop when it was blocking. So it was waving and saying hello to anybody that sent an attack and saying, hey, there is a server here. You should keep trying. And so I took one IP address that I was like, oh, this is from a country, that probably doesn't like us very much. And it looks pretty obviously malicious. So, and they were trying China Chopper. So I was like, oh, okay, this is easy. I was like, what happened when we sent the reset flag? And I saw a Christmas tree of, like, attacks right after it. And I was like, here's my point that I'm going to prove. And so I wrote a report, and I was very proud of this report. And do you know what happened? I got that one IP blocked, and it felt so good. So that's about it. So if you can't affect the big, go small, and, like, just take little ones and be positive about it. But that's really it. Does anybody have any other questions? Yes. So default was turned on, so it was good. We did have logs to look at. However, it also comes with either single or partial, or single or multi-packet capture, and that was turned off. So, can't have it all. Anything else? So, first, I go to the bar. And, no, so when I did not fully procrastinate. I had all of this outlined in writing before I did any of it. And so, when I generate my memes, I'm going to answer this like it's a serious question because I have a belly full of ice and it's terrible. I actually just sit around with friends and I say, hey, have you ever seen something this terrible? There's probably a meme for that. We should make one. And like that's legitimately how we generate memes. And actually, I want to go back to one. So if I can get there. This one. Hold on. Wait. Nope. This is not mine. This is somebody I used to work with. And this is the pain we felt. This is an old meme. Like we've had this around for a while, and it was a Friday, after hours, and so like memes just happen, and that's why kind of one of the encouraging factors of being here at Derbycon and with a bunch of friends is like just sit around and do stuff like this. It's great.